Everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me today. Today, we're talking about how the law of attraction can be marketed and framed as rebranded codependency. So I have a previous video about how the law of attraction is rebranded victim blaming, which is linked below if you want to watch that. But today we're talking again, another form that like this unhealthy concept is being re-spiritualized or like put in spiritual language so people think it's okay. So I want to say, if the law of attraction works for you, if you love it, if it's the greatest thing ever, if you have no issues with it, this is not the video for you. Please don't watch it. But if you have had questions about the law of attraction or the way it's been presented has felt a little off to you, hopefully this video can give you a little clarity around that. So first, let's talk about what is codependency and what is the law of attraction. So codependency, this is language that was formed around relationships with another person. But it can expand beyond that, right? So codependency, one definition is a codependent person is someone who has let someone else's behavior affect them to the point that the person who's being affected is obsessed with controlling the other person's behavior. So they can't feel a certain way unless the other person does this, or this thing, right? Or depending on how the other person is feeling, that's how that person is feeling. So if the other person's sad, I'm sad. If they're upset, then I'm upset. Or, if they're not doing this, or this, then I can't feel good about myself. And now, obviously, again, with codependency, I'll say this at the end as well, but there is a healthy level of being respected, cared for, and having like mutual reciprocity in relationships. But we're talking about this in like a really extreme way. Okay, so going along with that, codependency can also be a dysfunctional relationship dynamic where one person, again, the person who's really dependent on the other person's behavior being a specific way, that person can also be a giver, right? So they have no boundaries, they sacrifice their own needs. They say, well, I'm just being too much, so this other person can be themselves. I'm the problem, right? And sometimes we are the problem. But again, in this situation, it's like, is this chronic pattern of I'm giving and giving and giving, and then there's just like no reciprocity, or I don't feel I'm being heard back. And again, sacrificing their own needs, their own well-being, their own sense of self, who they are, for the sake of the other person. And so basically that's like with the person example, but you can also be, again, as I was saying, you can also become codependent or overly dependent on objects, ideas, or even society. So for example, a very common one of this is like drugs and alcohol use. Addiction is codependency on certain things. Basically, you're struggling with codependent characteristics around like feeling your sense of worth, your value, unconditional love is dependent on something outside of you, right? Something external. And so, of course, that causes like identity crisis or sense of self. If you can't have that thing when you want it, how you want it, whatever, right? Like that thing is like very much linked to your well-being. And again, this is a very fine line here because we know that like, right, we need to eat food to be healthy and to feel clear, but it's like, am I overeating? Am I undereating? Like there's this gray area with this. So just please, take this logically here, okay? But basically codependency, it's an emotional and behavioral condition that affects your ability to have a healthy, mutually satisfying relationship, whether that's with another person, a substance, an object, a job, a particular thing, right? And again, we're going to use some logic here, okay? We are an interdependent species. We know that it's important to have fulfilling and connected relationships. It's important to have things in our lives that add to our well-being, right? So it is important to, have a movement, like a body movement, do exercise to take care of our physical bodies. But again, is it to the point where it's become unhealthy? So again, using some discernment here, getting clear about that. But again, codependency at its core is basically like this over-reliance or an unhealthy relationship dynamic between you and something outside of you, right? In a way that you're very enmeshed, there's no clear dynamics, we can't really tell who's who. It's like your emotional state is overly dependent on someone. And again, like we are an interdependent species, it is important to be treated with respect and care and have needs and all these things. But, this is like the extreme example. This is extreme examples of unhealthy dynamics. So again, we are an interdependent species, and there also is something called counterdependence, which is where you are too independent, right? That's the opposite of codependence. So here it's just, again, use discernment about the situations this applies to. Okay, so that's codependency. Law of attraction is at its core basically that like attracts like, right? So the law of attraction by itself says, whatever you attract into your life, whatever you bring into your life is, there's something in your energy that is a match for that, and that's why it's here. So again, the first video I did about this, that's linked below, really goes through how I think that logic by itself is really flawed. It's really limiting. It basically puts you as a person in charge of everyone else's reality and saying you're more powerful than them and controlling them. It's, for me, it's more helpful to think about what am I responding to that comes into my life versus like, oh, I'm responsible for all of these things, right? So that's more of the victim blaming aspect. But so again, law of attraction, a lot of tools that are associated with it are, like really focusing on something enough. That's what you'll get. Saying affirmations, doing a vision board, doing visualization, all of these things, which again, I think to a certain degree, these things are healthy. And I think it's good to have goals, to get clear about what you want, to work towards them, to kind of say, okay, this is like where I'm going. This is what I'm thinking about. This is ideally, what I would like to have happen. This is my goal, my vision. That's a very healthy place to be. But where law of attraction becomes codependency, the main one that has become mainstream with this is around manifesting a specific person. So this is a concept that, I know who the right romantic partner is for me, and they either, we were together when we broke up, or they don't know who I am, or they haven't taken a chance on me yet, or they haven't met me yet, or something. It's basically like you think you know who the person is for you. And again, very normal to be attracted to someone, have a crush on them, right? But this manifesting a specific person is basically putting all your time and energy into having this person come towards you and being like, it's this specific person, that's it, the end, right? And so again, there's this fine line here of it is important to imagine the life you want to have with a romantic partner. If you want a romantic partner, thinking about what's important for you to have in a partner, the type of partner you want to be, what the relationship looks like, what you do together, right? You have to have that blueprint so you can get to where you're going. But again, where this becomes unhealthy, where it becomes codependent, it's like when it becomes about a specific person. So again, the most common scenarios I've seen this being talked about is the person like rejected you, you broke up, they don't know you, you're like all these things, and not again the healthy dynamic of we just met and so it's like slowly unfolding, right? That's different than like trying to control or manipulate or like wrestle with reality with the situation, right? And so instead of putting that energy onto yourself and telling myself, I respect myself, I'm waiting for someone who will come to me on their own, who will choose me on their own accord, who I don't have to like manipulate or play games with or like, focus really, really hard on them, right? Don't do that. Focus on yourself. Believe someone's behavior, respect and love yourself enough to focus on feeling better within yourself, right? And trusting that you won't have to chase or convince someone to choose you, okay? You put all that energy on filling up yourself with yourself and trusting that that energy is what is going to bring people who are for you to you, right? This law of attraction energy is like, okay, if I just visualize me and my person together, and if I just say enough affirmations that they're going to choose me, and if I'm just, they might not still, they still might not choose you, okay? Because you can't control someone else. And then the other question that a lot of people avoid with this and why this is so appealing is this is a lot of wounded people who get they get tricked into this dynamic of, okay, well, if I just put all this energy on this emotionally unavailable person who either isn't choosing me or, they're far enough away from me that they can't choose me because they don't know me or whatever, right? That typically means you are emotionally unavailable, because instead of putting all your time and energy on that person, you could open yourself up and be open to people who are emotionally available, who do want to date you right now, who are ready to go, who, whatever, right? Like you have to trust and believe that the person for you will be ready to be with you when it's time. And if not, then you can let them go and they'll come back like in their own way. But like this really, really heavy focus on trying to understand why are they doing what they're doing, or why is it like this, or what's happening with this, right? Over analyzing someone's behavior instead of just believing it for what it is codependency, right? This person isn't calling you. They're not hanging around you. They're not talking to you. Like believing that instead of being like, oh, well, they went through this thing, so that's why they're not talking to me, or they're going through this thing, and that's like, explaining away their behavior isn't going to change it. So with manifest a specific person, to me, the big red flag about it is it's putting all your time and energy and focus on this person who is not showing up for whatever reason. And instead of saying like, okay, I love myself, I respect myself, so I'm going to put my energy on myself and wait for someone who is emotionally available, is ready to choose me. And also, if that's not appealing to me, then I need to do the inner work and say, how am I not emotionally available? Why is someone who is giving me mixed messages and hot and cold interactions, why is that more attractive to me than someone who can show up and be like, sure, let's explore what's going on, let's do all of this, right? Like a lot of us are programmed into the highs and lows of mixed messages. Do they like me? Yes or no? What's going on, right? But that's not actually true intimacy. That's just game playing. And so again, with law of attraction as rebranded codependency, putting all this time and energy onto this dynamic is this thing where like you have an unhealthy relationship with yourself because you're trying to figure out what this person is doing instead of just believing their behavior and putting your time and energy and focus on someone who is ready to show up for you in that way. Okay, so that's like I said, the most common example that I've seen is manifesting a specific person. Oh, and I want to be clear that it is healthy, again, like I said, to think about, okay, this is the type of partner I want. These are the things we'll do together. This is, it is important to think about it in that way in terms of, I want a partner to do these things with. These are my values. This is what I'm looking for in a relationship, right? But when you hyper focus on it has to be with this exact person, that's where it borders into codependency. Okay, but so besides manifesting a specific person, this can be hyperfixating on a specific job, a specific house, a specific car, right? It's good, like I said before, it's good to have goals and work towards them. But again, we're talking about where this becomes an unhealthy amount. So it takes up all your time, all your energy, all your effort. You won't feel complete unless you have that specific one. Now, again, like we're not stupid here, okay? It does feel good to have a job that you like, have a living situation you like, to have all of that, right? So I'm not saying being comfortable with things that aren't good for you. But if you want a job, for example, or you want somewhere to live, it's like when you're obsessed with getting this one to the point that it like debilitates and affects other areas of your life. That's how you can also tell if you're codependent on something, right? Where it's like affecting other areas of your life. Hyper focusing on that one job, that one house, that one car, that one thing, that's where it becomes codependency. So again, it's healthy, like the same thing with a specific person, and good to be like, okay, I would like to live in a house that has this, this, and this, a job that has this, this, and this, right? Like we put the details, and then like the blueprint of it and how it actually turns out, that's what we surrender. And that's what we don't try to control, because we typically can't control that, right? But again, you can apply to a specific job you want, you can apply to live in this certain place, right? But it's knowing that your complete entire sense of self won't be desecrated, you won't be completely taken away from it if you don't get that specific one. Okay, and then another thing with this too, so first of all, besides respecting yourself, besides like, not controlling things you can't control, as humans, we're limited. And so we don't know what's best for us sometimes, right? So trying to force something that might not be the best for us instead of like believing the behavior that thing doesn't want us, right? Like, so if we don't get a job, it's okay to ask for feedback of like, can you please provide feedback for, my next interview, what you're looking for, why I wasn't selected. That's healthy. But emailing over and over and over again, or like, like pushing and pushing and pushing when the boundary has been set, that's codependency, and that's not law of attraction. Like that's not, like doing more and more and more and trying to change something that you can't change, that you don't have control over. That's where, again, law of attraction becomes unhealthy codependency. But so we also don't know, so again, we might not know what's best for us if we're forcing something. We don't know everything about something. So something can look amazing and be like, wow, this is the greatest thing for me ever, right? But how many times have we, myself included, not gotten something we wanted, and then we find out later, we're like, oh my God, thank God I didn't get that because I found out this, and this about it, right? So sometimes we think we can choose for what's best for us, but we might not know something that's going on in that dynamic or in that space that isn't actually a match for us, or isn't actually good for us, and we actually are being protected about something, right? A lot of times we can covet something, but actually it's not the best thing for us. Okay, so in summary, it's important to have goals. It's important to be clear about what you want. It's important to have visions and have the blueprints you can move forward and work towards that, right? Doing what you can control. But where law of attraction and codependency gets not helpful is when you hyperfixate on this thing and you put all your time and energy into that instead of working and changing on things within you, because the only thing we can control is ourselves, right? We can do everything a certain way and still not get the outcome we want. And so it's important for us to remember that if you're hyperfixating on something outside of us, or it's like to the point where you get debilitated, or you can't do anything unless I get this one specific thing, right? Then that's where it's time to like pull back and be like, okay, am I using this to kind of manipulate and control reality instead of just controlling myself and putting my energy on myself, right? So again, last little disclaimer, the law of attraction works for you, great. But if it felt off for you, there are some messaging around codependency in this, which I think does take advantage of people who maybe are just hurting and wounded and need to work a little bit on, manifesting some self-esteem and some self-respect. Say that lovingly instead of manifesting a specific person, right? It's like, how am I respecting myself? Am I caring for myself? Do I have boundaries instead of like, I need to get this one person back in my life and I need them to do this, this, and this thing, and whatever, right? You want things when you really love and respect yourself, you want things that choose you without you having to beg, without you having to plead, without you having to give your power away. And so again, law of attraction, if it works for you in terms of, visualizing things, saying, I would like to do this, this, and this thing. But again, hyperfixating on the specificity of it and the exact timeline in my exact way, that's where it gets unhealthy. Okay, that's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me. If you ever want any more information about me, all that is linked below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.